Today, or on last Saturday, we celebrated the installation of a big sign that says Carver Park, established in 1949, the first residential subdivision of African American citizens in Champaign-Urbana, which is a great compliment to Miss Roberts for having been able to achieve the privilege of having a sign installed in memory of many people that were in its inception, but have now gone on to a greater reward. And some of those personalities that were at part of the founding of Carver Park Improvement Association were Mr. Charles Phillips, and also the first residents of our area was Mr. and Mrs. Casey, and then Miss Shelton's daughter of Urbana, who has a laundry, was married to a young man. I don't recall his name presently, but maybe it will come to me before I finish talking to you. They lived in the house next door to the first house that was built up there, and the second one was the third house was Mrs. Belafont. She and her husband, who had a little slight business, they lived in that house. And next to Mrs. Belafont were Fred and his wife Cora Freeman, and they had been soldiers at Chanute Field. And on down the street from the Freemans was a house of a Clausel. I will call her name Bracy because she was the sister to Mr. Bracy. I don't recall her name from marriage, but she was one of the first residents in the area. And then there was a Mr. and Mrs. Holloway who lived in the house next to her. And next door was Flo Robertson and her husband. They too were soldiers. And the corner house, I don't recall who was living there, but it was a couple that were from Chanute Field also. So most of the residents at this time, and the first residents up there, were from Chanute Field Air Force that a lot of black men were enrolled in. And across the street from them was Fred and Evelyn Walker, who was a soldierman. And across on the corner was my husband and I, Don, and Kathryn Humphrey. And next to us was William Miller and Evelyn, members of Salem congregation. And next door to them was another couple from Chanute Field, the Kennedys, who still reside in the area and maintain their home. And next door to them was another soldier who was a sergeant up at Chanute, and their names was White. I don't recall what his first name is now, but later on, Mary Frances Vonadil, who is now one of the past teachers of Champaign-Urbana schools, lived there, and then she sold a house to her nephew or cousin, the McKinleys, Albert McKinley, who formerly lived on Tremont. And next door to them was Ann and her husband Smith. And next door was a vacant lot for a long while before Donald Alexander, the son of the Alexanders that lived on Eureka Street, built a home there. And then down along Carver Drive was Nettie Cook and her husband. I don't quite recall his name. And next door to them was Reverend and Mrs. Johnson, who moved here. He was a sergeant in the service, captain or something, but he was greatly honored in his position with the Air Force. He and his wife lived in the next house, and then next to them was another couple from Chanute Air Force. I don't recall their names, but presently Mr. J.W. Pirtle lives in that house. Then was Clarence Taylor and his wife, Clarence and Estelle Taylor, lived next door, and then there